by law enforcement. Of course, the citizens play a very important role. What I can commit is that our officers are willing to ensure that we rid the parish of the surge of crime that presently exists. It is not something that we want, and we know that this is not what Jamaica nor the citizens of Westmoreland want.
Superintendent Mackenzie says the police are working with the Grange Hill community to restore some semblance of normalcy. Despite Tuesday's massacre, he says that major crimes in the parish are actually trending down.
Of the 7 Category 1 crimes, 5 are down, to include robberies, rapes, and so forth. But of course, our main problem, shootings and murders, especially in the Savlamar and Morgan's Bridge police areas.
Reporting for CVM Live, I am Nicole Wilson.
Meanwhile, plunged into mourning and disruption, the operations of 2 schools that bear the name Grange Hill were severely hampered as a result of the massacre that took place in Westmoreland on Tuesday. Here is Joel Croskill with this report.
Soul searching at the Grange Hill Primary School, who lost one of its number to the violence that ravaged the community on Tuesday, with the murder of 7 people, including children.
Nicoy Bourne is the name of the student. His mother was a very helpful parent, always at PTA meetings. And she would come from time to time to look to see how he's doing. He did GSAT in the last sitting, and we were expecting great things of him. A very quiet student, didn't get into any trouble at all. In fact, he has never been to my office for any misdemeanor or anything like that. Very friendly, very courteous, and just about, a very good student, in fact.
The operations of the school have been greatly affected as a result of the slayings.
We have approximately 45 students out of a total of 465 on the morning shift. I am not certain what the afternoon shift will be like, but the door remains open. I know that there is a fear factor within the community, and so we really can't speak to what will happen.
Principal of the Grange Hill High School, Errol Stewart, says attendance has also been affected at his institution.
Since yesterday, we have been impacted by the disturbance in the community, and we had less than 25% of our normal population at school. That's yesterday. Today, we have even much less. We have, in fact, just over 3%.
The Grange Hill High School has opted to close its gates as a result of the turmoil. Expectations are that normalcy will return by Monday of next week. Joel Croskill, CVM Live.
Thanks, Joel. Executive Director of the National Integrity Action, Professor Trevor Monroe, says law enforcement must tackle corruption with the same vigor that is used to fight crime. Here's Khadija Thomas, and she tells us more in this report.
There is a need for more effective and equitable law enforcement in fighting corruption in the island. That's the belief of the Executive Director of the National Integrity Action, Professor Trevor Monroe. Professor Monroe was speaking at a panel discussion at the Association of Caribbean Police Commissioners' 33rd Annual General Meeting and Conference. He says the existence of the partisan political influence has become a hindrance to the investigative and the judicial bodies in tackling dishonest behavior among officials.
Fearlessness in investigation of the corrupt in high places. To go after the facilitators with the same energy as we go after the street criminals.
The executive director is now calling for reassurance in our legislative hierarchy, with everyone having access to the same system of law and governance.
Confidence that there's one law for all, and not one law for the rich and the well-connected, and another for the disadvantaged. That confidence will be sustained.
Citing a study conducted by the Inter-American Development Bank in 2017. In Barbados, Bahamas, and Jamaica, Professor Monroe says Jamaica had spent only 0.06% of its gross domestic product on the justice system. Khadija.
Translated, for example, that means in Jamaica, we have an average of 3 professional judges per 100,000 population.
Thomas, CVM Live.
And in other news, a woman had to be rushed to hospital this morning after being shot by an off-duty policeman on the grounds of the Sovereign Centre in St. Andrew. That story from CVM Live's Vaughn Thorpe.
The woman was not the intended target, but allegedly a windshield wiper who was having an altercation with the officer. The incident, which unfolded in the Sovereign Centre area, was sparked by the policeman's refusal of the services of the windshield wiper. He then inexplicably pulled his firearm, fired a single shot intended for the windshield wiper, but hit the woman. The matter has been reported to the Independent Commission of Investigations in Indicom. An account of the incident by a man who said to be the windshield wiper has gone viral.
Walk along to field car, when I dump my dog, I'm there, I stand up. Him turn on him wipe, I'm say, bossy, everything good, we not come on your glass. Him select up him gun. So I say, bossy, what that for? Oh, you do kill me now, man, in here? Him say, not, you don't check for him. No, man. Just put up on the gas station. Me the right there, sir. Him start run me down. Run me down now. And select the gun and fire it. When him fire it off of me, I whistle it to class me, yes, sir. Whistle class me, yes.
Based on investigators' report, the bullet had grazed her right thigh, entered her abdomen, and exited her left side. Mrs. Hutton is undergoing surgery. Vaughn Thorpe, CVM Live.
Former Minister of Finance Audley Shaw experienced some overlap of his old duties while speaking to a gathering of several agencies.
The Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, in partnership with the Organization of American States and the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, presented creative and innovative financing strategies for the MSME sector. Minister with responsibility, Audley Shaw, provided a vivid example of how the sector is facing difficulties in securing financing.
Despite the MSME sector being by far the substantial number of businesses in the country, we are only able to attract about 18% of the formal credit. And when we say the substantial portion of business, we are talking about well in excess of 90%. Some say as high as 97%. And yet, that sector is only able to access 18% of the formal money. That must tell us that something, as my mother would say, something not right.
Milverton Reynolds, Managing Director of the Development Bank of Jamaica, described the importance that funding the sector represents to any nation.
As countless studies and indeed the experience and reality of nations around the world have shown, developing the private sector is the one sure way to achieve sustainable development. And narrowing it down even further, it has been recognized by many that it is not just the entire private sector that requires this focus, but specifically the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises.
Joel Crosskill, CVM Live.
And tragedy in St. Mary. 3 women were burnt to death in a fire that destroyed a nightclub in Port Maria early this morning. The women are believed to have been employed to the club, located in the Trinity district. Here once again is CVM Live's Vaughn Thorpe.
These are the remains of the landmark nightclub after an early morning blaze ravaged the establishment. The fire reportedly started sometime after 4 o'clock Thursday morning. 2 units from the Port Maria and Ocheria's fire department responded to the blaze.
We discovered that the building was engulfed in flames
We got into operation immediately. We called for some assistance, so another crew rolled up. And while we were carrying out our cooling down operations, we discovered 3 bodies, which appears to be 3 females, who we were told by the operator of the club were inside there after they had closed off.
The cause of the fire is still unknown. However, a bank says investigations are underway.
We have started some investigations. The investigations are going to be continuing. I've called for some senior investigators to come on the scene. They are on their way now. So further on, we'll be able to give some information as to what exactly took place here.
The victims have not yet been identified. This is the second major tragedy to hit Port Maria, following last week's killing of Neville Tucker, who was chopped to death and house set ablaze. Vaughn Thorpe, CVM Live.
Time now for... Welcome back to CVM Live. Time now for the major stories in detail. And we start with the Cornwall Regional Hospital. Leader of the opposition, Dr. Peter Phillips, is calling on the government to establish an independent commission of inquiry to examine the circumstances surrounding the illnesses reported by the staff of the hospital, to include a determination of the extent to which the medical and non-medical staff of the hospital have had their health compromised, the extent to which family members and patients of the hospital may have been affected, and the precise chemical or biological agents causing noxious fumes, and the reasons for the delays in the decision to evacuate the main building. The opposition leader says the composition of the commission should be determined on the recommendations of the membership of the professional organizations of the doctors and nurses, and using the expertise of the local academic institutions, University of the West Indies, UTEC, and the Northern Caribbean University. State Minister in the Ministry of Education, Rudyard Spencer, says we must make an investment in education to stem the cycle of crime and violence within our society. Here's Khadija Thomas with his report.
The State Minister says education is critical to correctional facilities, as there is a tendency to treat prisoners as outcasts due to their past wrongs without recognizing that the institution is the place for redemption and rehabilitation.
Some may ask, why waste resources on those who have committed crimes? And I would say, I don't think that it is wasted. And I don't think crimes were committed. I want to believe that mistakes were made.
He says the Jamaica Constabulary Force conducted a survey with over 800 inmates in 2012, which revealed that the majority had access to secondary level education.
However, more than 74% of them either dropped out or graduated with passing 6C with no subjects.
The minister adds that the Correctional Services Department conducted their research between 2013 to 2016 and discovered that 70% of those incarcerated were illiterate and poor readers. The minister says inmates must be provided with assistance in bettering themselves before they leave the correctional facility.
Do we want these inmates to succeed when they return to their communities? The only sensible answer must be yes. We want and expect those released will become law-abiding, tax-paying, contributing members of our communities.
He was speaking at the Fort Augusta Adult Correctional Center on Tuesday, where several computers were handed over. Khadija Thomas, CVM Live.
And from Fort Augusta, we go to Rockfort, where several individuals descended on the Jamaica Public Service Company Limited's power plant in Rockfort, Kingston, earlier today. As CVM Live's Nicole Wilson reports, they were there to voice their displeasure over the treatment of a family member who they say was injured while carrying out the work for the JPS.
Every time we go to the hospital, they must sedate my son. Pay sedated with a tube that you can't talk.
And my brother, I'm watching back. Want justice. I'm telling this. The world feel this. I'm taste it. I can't even talk.
That was the father and sister of O'Dane Wood voicing their frustration just outside of the Jamaica Public Service Company's power plant in Rockfort, Kingston. Wood reportedly sustained burns to 95% of his body while allegedly carrying out work on behalf of the Jamaica Public Service Company on Friday, April 13. Some 2.5 weeks later, Wood is still in hospital and needs to go overseas for treatment. But that raises the question, who will cover these expenses? The family believes that this is the responsibility of JPS. Wood's mother, Anne-Marie Wood, says attempts at reaching officials from the company have thus proven futile.
We got up there to somebody that Williams in there. When we got there, them give me a phone and we were there to talk to the secretary. While we were talking to the secretary, she was talking to the big man. In turn, I said to us, so must go back to the plan and go back to the contractor. The contractor that called him, I know we not see the contractor that will call him for the job.
According to the family's attorney, Kimani Brightson, they need to meet with the Light and Power Company to determine whether there is a contractual obligation to Wood.
We don't have any success whatsoever to communicate with any of these officials. I've been contacted here by the family today to see if those negotiations will commence. I'll be able to represent the interests of the family and Mr. Woods. But as it is now, our priority is for him to receive medical treatment and everything else can come out.
Meanwhile, his mother, Anne-Marie Wood, says his condition is worsening.
The nurse said to us that his body are deteriorating and them can't afford to get dead for, which is 3 weeks now. And there's no help, there's nothing. We don't know who forgot because our called the APS, them now meet the demand, so we don't know what else to do.
CVM Live will continue to monitor the situation. Nicole Wilson, CVM Live.
Thanks, Nicole. Meanwhile, CVM Live contacted Director of Corporate Communications and Customer Experience at the Jamaica Public Service Company Limited, Winsome Callum. And she says there seems to have been a misunderstanding, but that has since been resolved.
I think there might have been some misunderstanding, which was cleared up today when we actually had a meeting with both parents and other representatives, including their lawyer. That meeting took place today at JPS, and I think whatever misunderstanding might have existed has now been clarified.
When asked about the responsibility of JPS in this case, she indicated that dialogue continues.
We have had discussions with the family, and there is a process that has to be observed with regards to who is responsible for what. And I think the family will be very, very satisfied now that they understand that process. So I'm not in a position to give any further detail except to say that JPS is in dialogue with the medical team, the company to which the gentleman is employed, as well as his family and his lawyer with regards to the next step in this case.
Well, today is May 1st, which means 31 days of affirming our children has begun with the launch of Child Month activities for the month of May at the Child Protection and Family Services Agency headquarters today. Here is Khadija Thomas again with this report.
From acknowledging the beauty in your children, telling them they are priceless, to reassuring your children of their inner strengths and abilities to succeed, by showing them how to identify the lessons within challenges, affirming your children will be made effective. The Child Month activities kick-started at the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, with the Chief Executive Officer, Rosalie Gage Gray, announcing a campaign.
The campaign will comprise 3 components: anti-bullying, ban the bullying campaign, #BTB, anti-corporal punishment, positive discipline, no spanking campaign, and the Protect Our Children, Protect We Picnic Them campaign.
Gage Gray says the campaign will be geared at sensitization, realization and rehabilitation of past bullying experiences. This ties in with day 21 of the Child Month calendar, reiterate to every child the importance of treating others the same way they would like to be treated.
The objective would be to allow victims of bullying to address their bullying in a safe space to outline the ways in which they are targeted by the individual and how it affected them.
Guidance counselors and dispute resolution members will be involved in providing instruction to participants in the campaign. Gage Grace says there's a need to engage Jamaicans in the Child Month activities.
We are launching a proactive campaign which seeks to provide parents with tips on how to protect their children and their neighbor's child, and we dare say all children.
Khadija Thomas, CVM Live.
And now for a CVM Live update. So the Trelawney police are concerned about the lack of white markings as well as reflectors on the Duncan's bypass in the parish. However, they do not attribute yesterday's fatal crash to the absence of these road safety aids, which are necessary for road users. Meanwhile, the police are circulating information regarding yesterday's deadly crash along the Duncan's bypass in Trelawney as they seek the public's assistance in identifying the bodies which were burnt beyond recognition. They will also be hoping the chassis number and other information about the car will help in leading to a positive identity about the driver, which could connect them to the passenger. The families of at least 3 persons are now plunged into mourning after the incident. Reports are about 1:45 yesterday afternoon, a Nissan Tida, which was heading in the direction of Falmouth, failed to keep left and subsequently collided with a Toyota Wish motorcar. The Toyota Wish motorcar was reportedly being operated as a taxi. The Nissan Tida reportedly burst into flames, killing the 2 occupants. After the blaze was extinguished, the charred remains of 2 bodies in the Nissan Tida motorcar were discovered. Education Minister Senator Ruel Reid says finalizing students should not find themselves deprived from completing their studies once they make the necessary arrangements with a tertiary institution to clear their outstanding balance. Here is Khadija Thomas again with this report.
Despite so many students still facing financial issues at tertiary institutions across the island, Education Minister Senator Ruel Reid notes that there are means and ways for these students to get assistance.
I note with interest also that this year there are some students, unfortunately, who find themselves challenged at the University of the West Indies in terms of finalizing. Last year, when we did our research, we discovered that a number of these students who found themselves in this particular dilemma had not sought to access the normal channels of support.
The minister says this assistance is available through the Student Loan Bureau, as well as the Labour Ministry's Program of Advancement through Health and Education.
We note in those many instances that they did not seek to apply for those particular facilities, including what we provide here at the Ministry, the JAMBAT program, which is a voluntary supported program where, as part of contributing 200 hours of voluntary service, the government would commit to fund up to $350,000 in tuition fees.
Minister Reid notes that the government had to intervene and a decision was made with the tertiary institutions.
The agreement was that if you had paid your fees up to the point of the semester proceeding and you're now finalizing and found yourself in financial distress, you just needed to convert that outstanding balance to a promissory note, a loan.
The Education Minister was speaking at the conference room at the Ministry of Education on Monday, where the Overseas Commission received $1.4 million from the Spanish Jamaica Foundation. Khadija Thomas, CVM Live.
Regional and international news with our reporter Nicoy Wilson.
First for news in Belize. A San Pedro resident remains in police custody, pending charges for the murder of his father-in-law in the San Mateo area of the island. Here's more from Channel 5 Belize.
Police are waiting for directives to lay charges against a man detained for the mid-afternoon stabbing murder of Gaspar Vargas. Around 1 p.m. on Monday, the 57-year-old man was at his house in the San Mateo area of San Pedro when he was accosted by his son-in-law, 35-year-old Jose Richard Mendoza, who also goes by the name Richard. Vargas received a large cut wound to the abdomen and was rushed to the San Pedro Polyclinic, but perished within minutes. Alma Vargas says she was at work when she got the call that her husband was hurt. By the time she got there, Gaspar was already dead.
and happening in St. Lucia. The groundbreaking is over and work has begun in earnest on Sandals Resorts International's fourth property.